Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another YouTube Live. I am Carolyn Southwell. If you can hear me, please just type in the chat that you're on so I know that the video and audio are working. Hopefully, we'll be able to get started in a moment. If we haven't met before, I'm Carolyn Southwell. I'm a 2-4 emotional projector. I've been coaching since 2012, playing with human design since 2014, so more than a decade, and layering in tapping in all sizes, shapes, and forms since about 2015. So hopefully we'll have some people jump on live and you'll be able to see that. And what we're going to talk about today is a little bit several layers down. So if you're very new to human design, this is probably going to be way over your head. And I recommend instead jumping around and having a look through my channel for some of the more beginner videos. They will be far more useful for you and a much better use of your time. So I can see we've got somebody on live. If you're able to type in the chat, if you can see and hear me, that would be great, because then we'll dive into the content, talking about planetary transits today. So let's see how we go. If you are watching this on the replay, you can, of course, jump forward. Most of you will catch it on the replay rather than live. But my intention this year is to do a lot more lives, because the videos take a lot of time. Until I have a production team, then YouTube lives are going to be the way for me to go. If you saw the one I did late last year, you'll know that I tried to do a screen share and all these fancy things, and YouTube didn't like it. So we're just making it really simple now, and I'm just going to read the pre-submitted questions straight off my phone for you once we know that people can see and hear me. So please do type into the chat if you can see and hear me. And I'll just make sure that I've shared a link with someone to see if we can speed this process up. If you are watching the replay, please do jump ahead so that you can make sure that you don't have to listen to all this preamble. Good word, preamble. Okay, so I'm just going to pop in here a link so that he can find it. And let's see. So we're going to talk about planetary transits. We're up to 2.5 minutes. So if you are still listening to me do this preamble, please do yourself a favor on the replay and jump ahead. If I can see 2 people on live, so please do. I'm hoping that the chat function is working. YouTube Live is fairly new to me, so even though I've been on YouTube for years, I've done pre-recorded videos almost the entire time. So yes, okay, so you can see and hear me. That is great. So without further ado, thank you so much, Brad. Let's get into the question. So a reminder, if you are very new to human design, it's going to be a much better use of your precious time if you have a click around on my channel and look for other content that is using language that's going to make sense to you. So the very first place when we're looking at human design is to start with your own human design chart first, before we think about the transits, the current planetary transits, or how the planets are affecting us now and now. Now this question was submitted, and I'm going to read it verbatim and then I'm going to pull it apart. So this was a planet ranking question. This is a person who thinks a lot. So if you are somebody who thinks about the details and the depths of human design a lot, and you're still trying to figure out how to live your design, you feel like you're really affected by the planets a lot, then this question may be useful and interesting for you. So they have said, when a hanging gate gets turned into a channel. Now, I'm not going to explain any of these things. I'm going to assume that you know what all of this language means if you're watching this YouTube live. So if you don't, then you're welcome to put it in the chat. You're like, what's a hanging gate? And then I can tackle it in future lives. But I'm just going to read through this, and I'm going to assume that you know what all the jargon is. And if it is over your head, then please do click around on the channel and look for other videos that you might find more useful and helpful at this point. So they've said, when a hanging gate gets turned into a channel and one previously undefined center and one open center becomes defined through a transit, is the power of that new channel proportional to the power of the planet that turned it on? Hopefully you're tracking with me. I'm assuming planets can be ranked in their power as a rough ranking system as shown on the body graph layout. Another way to ask this is, can you reference a guideline or rule of thumb to compare the power of the different planets relative to the resulting channel powers? My motivation is to see or create a spreadsheet to visualize the relative planet powers which impact me. So this person has a lot of openness in their design, so this is understandable. That they're trying to understand the impact of, celestial beings on them. Behind that is my theory that I'm becoming aware of transit impacts on me and my daily practice of seeing what channels are active in me and my companions. So that was the main crux of their question when it comes to planets. So here's what I know. As soon as I read this now, I have the good fortune of also knowing this person individually. So this is a question that is asked by somebody who's highly logical, who thinks a lot, and who is trying to break this system apart and look at it in all its various logical pieces. I also know that somebody who asks this kind of question about how to live their design and how to live in alignment is still really heavily conditioned. Now, that is not to say that this is that person's fault or to shame them or you if you are heavily conditioned in any way. We cannot do anything about the amount of conditioning that we've experienced up to this point in time. We can only do something about what we do moving forward. So if you had a really challenging childhood and you realize that you had lots of people who were shooting on you and telling you all the things of you must do this and you must do that and you must behave this way and come on, keep up and blah, 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 or slow down depending on your design, then the most important thing to realize is if you're asking very heady questions, here's what I want to say. If you're asking very heady questions in human design, take this as a sign that you are really quite mired, quite stuck in your conditioning. And your highest priority, much, much higher than creating a spreadsheet about the impact of planetary transits on you, is to prioritize deconditioning. Now, I know this person is working very hard at deconditioning as well as they can, but I wanted to say that for anyone who is watching along and say, if you are asking very in-depth, complex questions about human design and it feels really important that you understand them as opposed to just a fun game because you're curious, then the highest priority is to make sure that you have a deconditioning tool that works. Because what I have seen in the last more than decade of playing with human design is if we don't decondition this stuff, if we don't understand how to be in the present moment and to navigate life as it occurs to us, then it doesn't matter how much you know about human design. And I've seen this time and time again with human design experts who have like double the amount of time that I have in human design, who are still tripping over aspects of life because they haven't prioritized the deconditioning. So I want to say that is the most important thing that needs to be reflected as I answer this question. Now, there's a couple of things in here. Whether you are, whether when you look at the impact of a planet or another person, so whether it's a celestial being or a human being or a puppy dog being or who is sort of impacting you, in the case of planets, they are a long way away, and because they are so big, they still have an impact on us. Or whether it's your partner or your puppy dog or someone else who lives, another being that lives in the house with you, or a co-worker that you sit next to at work, they are going to affect you. But it doesn't make, as this person had in their question, it doesn't define that center for you. It doesn't define that channel for you. It does give you a flavor of the energy that's in that gate that has been highlighted by the other person or the planet or whatever the energetic being is that's impacting you. So it is super helpful to know where the planets are and you can use an ephemeris, you can use a human design app to be able to track those. But in terms of, so that's the first thing is understanding it doesn't actually, like we have a big chunk of this year where if we said, oh yes, well the planetary, the celestial bodies actually impact us to such a way that they give us definition, then that would make a whole lot of everyone on the planet for a whole big chunks of this year manifesting generators or manifestors because of the particular planetary transits we have. And that's not the case. You really hear this. If you are a projector, you are still going to be a projector. If you are a generator, you are still going to be a generator. If you're a reflector, you're still going to be a reflector. But you are going to be impacted by those energies. Now, they have said, is it fair to say that based on the order of the planets on the body graph, that is the amount of power they assert over you? We don't know for sure. There is no a very clear, definitive answer one way or the other. Generally speaking, the closer the planet, the more impact it will have. Just like if I have a human being in the same room as me or sleeping next to me, they're going to have more of an impact over me. My partner will have more of an impact over me and my design as he sleeps next to me than, say, one of my family members who is 1,000 kilometers away, right? So general rule, the closer, the more impact, yes. But there are some interesting things to keep in mind. So having a look at what Saturn's doing, having a look at what Mars is doing. These two in particular can sort of bounce us around a little bit. Having a look at whether or not a planet is in retrograde. You might need an ephemeris for that. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it. Zen Human Design sells them as books for multiple years at a time. And that will help you to understand the kind of impact it will have. It will cause you to be more reflective on that. But for this person who has said, my motivation is to see or create a spreadsheet to visualize the relative planet powers which impact me. My theory that I'm becoming aware of transits and how they impact on me, it's like they're always forever moving. If you look at the moon, it's like every 10 or 11 hours it's in a different location. You could spend your whole day constantly checking in, all multiple times, an hour every day through your waking days, every day of every week, just to try and keep up with how they're impacting you. And that doesn't sound like a very good use of your time or your life to me. Now, what I do sense is that anyone who has had a really rough childhood is going to have a tendency to want to try and control things. And that's what I see when I look at this question of if I can just understand the influences on me, then maybe I can control this and maybe I can feel a bit safer. Again, not to shame. This is about a person trying to feel safe, trying to gain enough understanding that they feel safe. Now, again, if you have the design of somebody who is designed to dive into the details, like this person is actually, but it comes from a playful, curious place, wonderful. You can ask the exact same question from a playful, curious place. And if you feel really deeply safe, then it's just enjoyable to go down human design rabbit holes. But if you find yourself asking these questions from a place of fear or need to control or trying to feel safe enough to navigate your day-to-day life, then that's where helping yourself feel safe, regardless of not having this depth of information or not having a way to know the exact amount of power that each planet exerts over us, the deconditioning, the helping yourself feel safe thing is so much more important. So let me see if I can come back and pick up anything here. So can you create a spreadsheet? Of course. General rule, yes, the closer, the more impact. The other things that I would look for, particularly, far more than the power, you know, the so-called amount of power each planet has over you at any point in time, because it's sort of like asking how long is a piece of string. It's so difficult to ascertain, right? And because the planets are always moving in relation to us, it depends on how deep do you want to go. Do you want to look at the level of gate, or do you want to go down to the level of line, or do you want to go down to the level of color or tone or base? Like, you can do your head in with this stuff, right? So what I think is a better use of your time, apart from the deconditioning, and I won't bang on about that anymore, you know, please decondition. I could say it in every single video for the rest of time. Please prioritize the deconditioning. What is more useful if you're looking at planetary transits, whether you're doing it through an ephemeris, a book, or you are looking on a human design app, and there are a few of them now, is to look at, yes, which of the hanging gates are going to have that impact from another. How do I explain this simply? YouTube Live is a very good way for my open throat and all my threes to practice. Thanks for bearing with me as I get better and better at this. When you look at a planetary transit chart, however you're looking at it, ephemeris or on a human design app, and you notice that what is being highlighted by, say, Mercury that day, Mercury is a good example, is in opposition to one of your hanging gates, it is going to affect you more than if you didn't have this hanging gate, right? So if that meant you still had only one half of the channel, the flavor of that, I'm not even going to say defined, but the flavor of that. So yes, if you suddenly discover that if you were to create an overlay of the current planetary transits over the top of your chart, and you looked at where you suddenly had defined channels, if you're watching the replay, go back to the beginning earlier when I talk about that we don't really have definition from the planets, then yes, that is going to affect you more. So like, look at and ponder what impact that could have. Now, this is only going to be a useful and like effective use of your time if you have a pretty solid understanding of each of the gates. If you don't, it's like trying to learn a whole new language. It's way more useful for you to go and work through some triggers and like have as loving interactions with your nearest and dearest, and focus on doing work and play that you love. That's going to be a way more useful time than way more useful use of your time than trying to learn about all of the gates and all of the channels and all of the centers all in a really short period of time. Because I can tell you, after more than 10 years of playing with human design, I'm still fucking learning things. There is so much in this system. So assuming that you do have enough knowledge to know, oh, okay, maybe I have gate 48 defined, and then, oh, look, at the moment Mercury is in 16. Now it's not, I haven't checked the transits, but let's say for argument's sake it is. If you know what the energy of 16 is about, then you can have a look at that and go, wow, okay, let me get curious about how different it feels for me in my lived experience. What do I see that looks different than usual? What do I perceive now that I have that influence, that experience of 16? Know that it's temporary. But it is going to affect you. And I see the way the planets affect me, because I'll do things like I'll be writing an email newsletter, and I'll make sure I put a link for that in below this video after it's live in case you want to jump on there. But sometimes I will notice myself very clearly writing about a topic, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound like me. But I'm like really clear that I want to write about this particular thing. And then I get curious and I go and check Mercury. I'm like, oh, Mercury is in, that is highlighting that particular energy that I'm writing about right now. And since Mercury is so much about communication, then that's exactly what's going to come out. So this YouTube live is almost 20. Hi, Mark. How you doing? Thank you. YouTube Live is almost up to 20 minutes, so my open throat is going to stop rambling very, very soon. If what I will do is make sure that I leave this. I'm going to see if I can leave the chat open this time as a sort of comments thread. And if you have more questions, I do well with pre-submitted questions because then my emotional authority has some time to chew over what you've asked. And if it's a question that I think will be helpful for the community, then I'm happy to answer it in this format. So if you enjoy the way I teach and the way I work my way through things to explain them, then of course you're welcome to follow along on the channel. If you hit subscribe and then you hit the notification bell, you will get emails each time that I go live. And then it means if you're somebody who is on email a lot, then you'll be able to jump on pretty soon after I go live and jump in on the action. So if that's something you want to do, no hard sell on that, because I know I don't like receiving emails on additional things. But if that feels like a resource that's useful to you, know that you could use it that way. Obviously, there's lots of videos on this channel, so you can click around and I'll think about any other things that might be useful, and I'll always put them in the video description. But for now, I think I'm going to call it quits there. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the next YouTube Live whenever I do that. Bye for now.